Notice the headline, Forced National ID Card Attached to Every American Worker. Get ready for the know-all, see-all National ID Card plus. Here's some excerpts from the article. Obama and his administration want to know and control everything, namely us. If given the chance, Obama and his crew will morph into place a national ID card. Now, the push is on to quickly create a biometric card which would have embedded information, personal information, and fingerprints. This is part of the grander scheme to control all Americans, what we eat, how long we live, where we go, what we do for work, health care, guns, use of gas and energy, and freedom in general. The article goes on to say, Pat Wood of AugustReview.com broke a huge story and wrote a few articles on the reemergence of technocracy and the environmentalists' push and plan for a green economy using carbon credits. No more cash, no more capitalism as we know it. You would be assigned so many carbon credits as a month to use for gas, food, and other needs. Pat also talked about the push now for smart grid technology. This is where chips are put into your house, from washing machines to ovens and phones. The smart grid knows exactly how much energy you use, for what, and when you use it. Appliance companies are putting readable chips in them so the smart grid can do their thing. Then there is the control with the healthcare bill. In the Senate and House version still being manipulated into place, they have described the IRS controlling this bill. It would have access to your bank accounts, especially if health payments or bills were late. Did you ever wonder why this healthcare horror show would be governed by the dreaded IRS? Wonder no more. They have the biggest and most complicated computer system of tracking there is. We yell about the paid-for abortions, forced health insurance or else sections, and rationed health care for seniors, but the biggest nightmare is a controlled system that connects and directs traffic of government control hiding behind health. The push for a cashless society, carbon credits, and total control of people, energy, and money, and a forced national ID, then later, the mark of the beast, as the Holy Bible describes, will come. And this is not a Christian. It would seem that the nationalization of the United States will fast become the catalyst for the globalization of the entire world. In other words, once everything is under our government's control, we will then be ready to hand it all over to a global control. Now, one might argue that this would never happen, not in the good old US of A. Well, I suggest to you that we may not have any choice because we will be forced to. As I talked about last week, what we're spending as a nation is play money. It doesn't exist. If you were to cash out the entire United States of America, you might come in at about approximately maybe shy of $50 trillion with a T. Did you know what the current rate of spending, the current rate that the government is incurring debt, we will soon and very soon be incapable of servicing just the interest on that debt. And we will wake up one morning and realize that we are bankrupt in the sense that we owe more than we're worth. In other words, 12 trillion soon becomes 20, 20 soon becomes 30, and 30 soon becomes 50. And when you owe more debt than what you're worth, where I come from, they call that insolvency. And that's what's going to happen to the United States of America. Now, I realize that this is quite depressing. And I'm not sorry, because this is the truth, and the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. The fact of the matter is that something has to happen to this once greatest and most powerful nation on earth we call home, the United States of America. How else can you explain the conspicuous absence of the United States of America in Bible prophecy? In other words, something has to happen. Now, as I've watched this play out from 2008 to the present, I've sort of been scratching my head trying to figure out how to connect the prophetic dots. You know, as I watch this, as they call it, the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression, and as I watched all of these, quote, government bailouts / stimulus packages, and tried to figure out how it's all going to work out and come together, I finally came to the conclusion this last week that everything is going according to plan ever so perfectly, and everything is right on time. And it will be, I believe, a fact that the United States of America will lose her sovereignty, because instead of being a nation that lends, we are a nation that is in debt. And China and the other nations with China will essentially, and do already essentially and virtually, own the United States of America. Now, why do I share this depressing news? Because I'm a sick individual and I need prayer. No. Well, that might be true, but that's not why. The reason is because I believe God wants us to loosen our grip on this world and the things of this world, because this is not our home, especially not for very long. He wants to ready us and steady us so that when he returns, it won't come as a thief in the night. Jesus said it this way: these things must come to pass. In other words, this has to happen. See, you know, I used to get all worked up and angry, and I'd start yelling at the TV, and then when my kids started yelling at the TV and imitating me, I stopped yelling at the TV. And I just realized that what Jesus said is right. In fact, I quit fighting it in the sense that, listen, this has to happen, and really, I want this to happen, because the more that this happens, the more closer my Jesus' return for me as his bride is. And listen, I kind of want to go home. I want to go home. Listen, I know that for many of you, and myself included, we have many loved ones who don't know the Lord yet. And it's a bittersweet homecoming, if you will. But I have to tell you that as for me and my house, we're as ready for the Lord's return as if it were today, as we would be if it's not for another 10 years from now. I don't think it's another 10 years from now. I'm surely praying that it's not another 10 years from now, because my daughter will be 13 and my boys will be driving. So Lord, come quickly, but enough of my problems. When Jesus in Luke's gospel, it's recorded, said that when you see these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads and know that your redemption draweth nigh. What he was saying was, church, my bride, when you start seeing things that will ultimately find their fulfillment in the tribulation, and the rapture is before the tribulation, then how soon and how close is the rapture? Because already these things are beginning to come to pass. They're beginning to find their fulfillment. See, when the Antichrist comes on the scene, he does not set up a one-world government, a one-world religion, and a one-world economy. All he does is turn on the switch. All he does is show up and arrive on the scene, and everything is already in place.